Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, May 10th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. For the first time, we're hearing from a woman who was hospitalized after police shot her in the face with a beanbag round. It happened during the protests in La Mesa that were followed by riots and looting. Here's KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman.
I'm very, very weak.
Leslie Furcron was hit in the face with a beanbag round by La Mesa police at a protest nearly 2 weeks ago.
And I never had came out here that night for this to be a part of my story.
The 59-year-old La Mesa resident spent a week in the intensive care unit and says she's thankful to be alive.
First and foremost, I need to just thank God for still being here.
Her attorney says her skull was fractured and she can't see out of her left eye. They're planning to sue for medical costs.
There is no reason why Ms. Furcron should have to shoulder the burden of these injuries of no fault of her own by herself.
Recounting the night of the incident, Furcron's attorney says while protesting she threw a can on the ground.
She had just called the police murderers. She said, "You guys are murderers." And then subsequent to that, in the video, you can hear the shot and then you can see the impact.
La Mesa police officials say Furcron threw something at deputies before the beanbag round was fired at her from about 40 yards out. Furcron's attorney calls it retaliation and wants the officer who shot the round identified.
Asking that this name be released so that we can all be involved in this investigation, because this type of force is just not appropriate.
Yesterday, in an interview with KPBS, La Mesa Police Chief Walt Vasquez said they have identified the officer who fired the beanbag round, but are not releasing his name.
Eventually, per the Senate Bill 1421, that information will be released, including the video. But at this time, the officer's name will not be released.
Vasquez did say the officer is not in the field, but Furcron's attorney argues LMPD is hiding information.
All we have is La Mesa Police Department holding all the cards and not showing them to anyone.
Today, the La Mesa police chief issued a statement saying, in part, he wishes Ms. Furcron a full recovery and is promising an investigation into this unfortunate incident. Just yesterday, the La Mesa City Council voted unanimously to review everything that happened during the protests. The city is also working on a new budget, and at its next meeting, council members want to see a full breakdown of the police department's expenses. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
While the National Guard has left San Diego, they haven't been the only federal responders during local protests against police brutality. The Border Patrol has also been on hand and promoting their involvement on social media. But now lawmakers are wondering why the Border Patrol is getting involved with local law enforcement and under what authority. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler has the story.
On the evening of May 31st, as the San Diego County Sheriff's Department fired tear gas and pepper balls from atop the county administration building at protesters at a vigil below, get up top shooting! Border Patrol agents were on hand to lend support. While this might seem outside of their job description, Border Patrol told KPBS in a statement that this deployment is about supporting the efforts of our federal, state, and local partners, not about carrying out U.S. Customs and Border Protection's immigration enforcement mission. After the vigil was cleared out of protesters, Border Patrol agents posed on top of a memorial to George Floyd. The photo was then posted on social media by Border Patrol Sector Chief Aaron M. Heitka. It was deleted shortly after. Border Patrol said that there was never any intention to offend, intimidate, or disparage peaceful protest or the memory of George Floyd. But the photo itself raised a lot of questions about how exactly Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection are assisting local law enforcement during these protests.
These agencies have long operated as black boxes.
Mitra Abdullahi, a lawyer with the American Civil Liberties Union of San Diego and Imperial Counties, has led several efforts to learn more about how Border Patrol operates.
One of the things that is being really crystallized for many people right now is how important it is for law enforcement to be meaningfully accountable to the public that they purportedly serve, and how, if they aren't, serious and lasting damage results.
Asked specifically what its agents were doing at the protests, Border Patrol told KPBS it would not be appropriate to disclose law enforcement operational specifics, which could jeopardize operational security. Abdullahi isn't the only one asking questions. California Senator Kamala Harris and San Diego Congressman Juan Vargas have sent a letter to the head of Customs and Border Protection, demanding answers regarding what precisely your agencies will be doing and what policies and procedures are in place to protect the rights of individuals with whom you come into contact during protests. The letter asks for a response by this Friday.
You can't have it both ways. You can't be law enforcement and not be accountable like law enforcement. We have to make sure that they are held to those same standards, that they don't get a free pass, and that they aren't able to define their law enforcement mandate as whatever they decide it should be.
He up there shooting at us from up top.
Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
A day after George Floyd was laid to rest, his brother testified before Congress demanding police reform. This as the Minneapolis police chief pledges to change the department. Camila Bernal has more.
A passionate plea to Congress from George Floyd's grieving brother.
He didn't deserve to die over $20. I'm asking you, is that what a black man is worth? $20? This is 2020. Enough is enough.
The congressional hearing centers on sweeping legislation introduced by Democrats to address systematic racism in policing. Republicans also considering proposals to combat racial discrimination and police brutality.
Honor George and make the necessary changes.
In Minneapolis, the city at the center of the crisis, the police chief pledges change.
American policing in this nation, we have to address the race issue head on.
The police department is immediately withdrawing from contract negotiations with the police union. Instead, outside advisors will be brought in to provide what the chief calls better transparency and more flexibility for true reform.
We don't just need a new contract with the police. We need a new compact with the police.
In addition, the department will use performance data to spot early warning signs of potential police misconduct.
We have an opportunity not only to change how we do business in terms of being peacekeepers in Minneapolis, but across this nation.
Camila Bernal, KPBS News.
Just moments ago, Mayor Kevin Faulconer announced that the San Diego Police Department is working to develop a new de-escalation policy. He says the department has been working on the changes using feedback from last week's meetings. Faulconer says once it's complete, it will take effect immediately. The mayor did not name any specific policy changes. KPBS has examined all use of force records released by local police departments in the past year, and coming up, we'll dive into what our analysis reveals. Now for an update on the coronavirus in San Diego County. Today, health officials reported 4 more people have died from the virus. 108 new cases have also been identified. In less than 48 hours, the county will take a huge step forward in the reopening process, but as KPBS reporter John Carroll tells us, it comes with a warning that it could all fall apart if the virus takes off.
San Diego County slowly began the reopening process weeks ago, but this Friday, things really shift into high gear. From bars to hotels, gyms to the zoo, movie theaters to swimming pools, lots more people will be able to gather in public spaces than at any time since the state's stay-at-home order went into effect in mid-March. Not every business and organization that can reopen on Friday will. For instance, the San Diego Zoo has announced it won't reopen until June 20th. You can check the county's website, sandiegocounty.gov/coronavirus, for a list of all entities that are being allowed to reopen Friday. After months of not being able to go to some of our favorite places, a lot of people are ready to get back out. But Supervisor Nathan Fletcher is urging caution. Spikes in coronavirus are happening right now, disturbingly close to home.
As of Tuesday, Orange County saw an average of nearly 400 people hospitalized with COVID-19, which is up 100 from where they were in May. Ventura County saw a doubling of their COVID hospitalizations from Friday until Monday.
In addition, the ICU units of Imperial County's 2 hospitals are full. Arizona is facing a disastrous situation in Yuma, Phoenix, and Tucson, with almost all ICU beds full. Still, as things stand today, the 13 metrics, or triggers, the county watches to see if our cases are stable, are all still in the green. But many health experts are worried that as states continue to reopen, spikes of cases in the fall become much more likely. County Health Director Dr. Wilma Wooten says that's a constant concern.
People just throw caution to the wind and not adhere. We will be seeing similar results as are seen in other parts of the country, including Arizona.
Wooten has said on many occasions that if that happens, she won't hesitate to pull things back, putting us all right back where we were before. John Carroll, KPBS News.
A ballot measure that would undo part of California's Prop 13 and provide billions of dollars for schools was already going to be a hot-button issue this November, and that was before the pandemic brought massive budget cuts. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong spoke to supporters who say schools need this measure to pass now more than ever.
Good morning, everybody.
Educators, community advocates, and elected officials met virtually Wednesday to voice their support for schools and communities first. A November ballot measure that would eliminate the property tax protection Prop 13 has given large corporations since 1978.
And this measure simply closes a loophole that has been exploited.
County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher is among many who say Prop 13, which limits yearly property tax increases, was meant for individual homeowners, not some of the state's wealthiest corporations. And he says families have paid the price.
It's a burden that has fallen on the backs of our students. It's a burden that has fallen on the backs of our communities and our parents and our neighborhoods. And it is simply time that we right this wrong.
If the ballot measure passes, owners of commercial properties worth more than $3 million would have to pay property taxes based on current assessed value, not on the original sale price, which is what Prop 13 mandates. The difference is huge for properties purchased many decades ago. According to Fletcher, this measure could generate an additional $150 million a year for San Diego County. San Diego Unified School District will get about $60 million in additional funding.
Disneyland is being taxed on 1978 levels. Which is just absurd.
Richard Barrera is the vice president of the San Diego Unified School District's board. Closing this loophole would help the district mitigate the devastating impact the coronavirus pandemic has had on its budget.
That is the money that would allow us permanently to have the nurses, the counselors, the small class size, the cleaning and hygiene that we need in our schools.
Barrera said if the measure passes, San Diego Unified would see the money in the 2021-2022 school year. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
The San Diego Zoo is reopening for the general public in a week and a half. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says the facility will welcome members and donors for select access before the general public is allowed inside.
San Diego Zoo officials say they had been thinking about reopening even before they were ordered to close their doors in mid-March because of the coronavirus pandemic. San Diego Zoo Global CEO and President Paul Barabalt says the animals at the 2 facilities were well cared for during the shutdown.
With our doors closed, we are still having to maintain all of our nutrition services, all of our wildlife care, all of our vet care at 100%.
Barabalt says it cost the zoo more than $200 million a year for that care.
So that's something that depends on gate, that depends on audiences coming in. We've been able to continue through this because of the support we've received through the years.
Barabalt says zoo officials have worked hard to protect people when they return. The zoo will only allow half the crowd they normally have, And Barabalt says it's just the first step. The zoo will reopen in phases, and that means bringing back furloughed workers in phases.
As we open different parts, we will be bringing our staff back. And so it'll be in phases as we go along. As we can see the audience coming back, we'll bring up and return everybody to meet that same demand.
And while the zoo can plan for the crowds to return, it is the crowds returning that will determine whether or not this is a success. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Disneyland is getting ready to welcome back visitors next month. Officials are proposing a phased reopening, with Disneyland and Disney California Adventure Parks opening July 17th. Theme park capacity will be limited to comply with physical distancing requirements. Guests will have to make a reservation in advance. More details on the new reservation system are expected soon. The heat wave is sticking around for at least one more day. Mark Mancuso has your forecast.
Temperatures will be trending down over the next couple of days, and we'll begin to see a little bit of cooling right along the immediate coast during the day on Thursday as the flow starts to turn on shore. More significant cooling coming in for Friday and Saturday, and then over the weekend, Sunday, a little bit warmer and a bit breezy. For tonight, just a few clouds here and there near the coast. Oceanside 55, San Diego at 62. Ramona dips down to 53. Borrego Springs, a warm night, 72. Mount Laguna, 56, and Campo at 51. For Thursday, well, the heat holds in the interior sections, but along the coast, not as hot. It's still warm, just not as hot. Here in San Diego, about 78. Oceanside, 81. Clouds and then some sunshine. Ramona, El Cajon, still in the low 90s, or Escondido's at 90. Borrego Springs, still hot, 108. Mount Laguna, 79, and Campo at 91. Here comes that trough on Friday, and with that, more significant cooling is on the way. And as we take a look at our temperatures, there you can see how we'll see our temperatures drop from the low 80s to the lower 70s into Friday. Clouds and sun Saturday and Sunday. Notice Sunday just a little bit warmer, so just a little brief warm up Sunday into Monday. Inland sections not as hot on Friday. Saturday should be pleasant, clouds and sunshine. And then temperatures creep up a bit Sunday and Monday. In the mountains, plenty of sun, still very warm Thursday. Then the temperature starts to drop off Thursday. Look at that off Friday. And then Saturday, you can see it's cooler in the 60s and pleasant on Sunday. And in the deserts, yes, it's really hot, but not as hot. Friday will drop into the 90s Saturday. Then temperatures creep up into Monday with sunshine. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
The use of force is a hot topic right now, and KPBS joined other media outlets to sue local police agencies for their investigations into officer use of force. Investigative reporter Claire Tregesser examined the nearly 130 internal investigations released so far and found local police use force against people of color at a significantly higher rate than against white people. A warning, this story contains graphic images.
Keep your hands up! Keep your hands up! If he drops his hands down again, I'm gonna beanbag him.
On a summer night in 2018, Sky Oliver had lost control.
Hey, Sky, this is your final warning. If you do not listen to us, you're gonna get bit by the dog.
The White Valley Center resident had gotten into a fight with some neighbors. As the altercation escalated, Oliver threatened them with a shotgun, according to cell phone video.
Is that a rifle? Yeah, it's like a shotgun.
He then fled in a stolen truck.
What's your call sign?
By the time Oliver returned, sheriff's deputies had arrived on the scene. They ordered him to exit the truck. He at first refused and at one point reached down into his lap.
I'm not gonna hurt you.
When he finally did leave the truck, officers used beanbag launchers and a police dog to take him down. His most serious injuries were bites from the police dog.
We're not gonna let you die, dude, okay?
I wanna see my daughter.
Nearly 5 years earlier, an officer in the El Cajon Police Department confronted Raymond Goodloe, an African-American man riding his bike on the sidewalk. The internal police investigation says Goodloe reached for his waistband and ducked behind a car. The officer shot the unarmed 53-year-old 6 times. Miraculously, Goodloe survived the shooting. These use of force incidents had different circumstances, happened years apart, and involved separate police agencies. But they are linked by a disturbing trend in San Diego County. A KPBS analysis of nearly 130 records dating back to 2001 shows when police use force on a suspect, if the suspect is a person of color, police are more likely to shoot. If the suspect is white, police are more likely to use alternative methods of force, including tasers, beanbags, police dogs, or tackling the suspect. Right now, people across the world are taking to the streets to protest police violence against people of color in the wake of George Floyd's killing at the hands of Minneapolis police. Thousands of San Diegans have participated in demonstrations throughout the county in recent weeks. Many police agencies have responded by publicly condemning the Minneapolis officers and vowing reform. The San Diego Police and Sheriff's Departments, along with other local departments, have ordered officers to stop using chokeholds on suspects. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer has come out in support of a more powerful Citizens Review Committee for police practices.
For many years now, in many police departments across the country, we've really had a warrior mentality.
One expert on police behavior calls these welcome changes. But he says the reform needs to go deeper, and departments need to acknowledge a difficult truth.
I think, quite frankly, that many police officers have a fear of black males. It's more blatant than implicit bias. They wear it on their sleeve.
Philip Stinson is a criminal justice professor at Bowling Green State University and a former police officer himself.
They may not admit it to you or me, but that's the reality of the situation. Police officers feel threatened by black males.
Most of the local law enforcement agencies contacted by KPBS for this story declined to comment. Only the Sheriff's Department sent a statement asking that KPBS not publish the findings. The department argued that the analysis contains, quote, many flaws because the findings are based on an inappropriate and incomplete data source. One reason why the data is incomplete is that the Sheriff's Department still hasn't released 90 use of force records since the law requiring them to do so went into effect nearly a year and a half ago.
It is not enough. We have a lot of ground to make up for, but the training has to come from the root that we have biases and that our systems have been built on institutional racism.
San Diego City Councilwoman Monica Montgomery says she's encouraged by the recent changes police have made, but she says there's a long way to go.
I get videos often of officers acting in ways that I don't think is acceptable. So we do have to make all of these reforms from the outside, but the culture needs to shift from the inside. And there are ways that happens. That happens through discipline, it happens through training, but it has to happen.
Tomorrow, we'll look at how San Diego police are trained on using force. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
Defund the police has been one of the rallying cries from protesters, activists, and some city officials across the country. But how would it work? Some who support the idea want to strip all police funding and dissolve entire departments. But other advocates want to reallocate some, but not all, money away from police departments and into training civilians to do some of the work police have always done.
We've done an analysis of all the reasons people call 911 and have looked at ways we can shift the response away from armed police officers into a more appropriate response for mental health calls, for some domestic violence calls, for health-related issues.
Advocates for defunding police say that money can be used to pay for schools, hospitals, housing, and mental health services in poor or marginalized communities. They argue that would make them safer. But one police chief is worried about what could suffer.
The first thing will be training and all the things we need to make sure that we have the properly trained and professional police that our communities deserve.
Police unions are critical of the idea. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti recently proposed cutting the city's police budget by up to $150 million. a suggestion the LAPD union strongly opposes. After more than a month in San Diego, the USS Kidd is continuing its scheduled deployment. It arrived in April after multiple sailors tested positive for COVID-19. The guided missile destroyer underwent a deep cleaning and left this morning. The Kidd is returning to the Pacific coast of South America to resume counter-drug operations. Starting tomorrow, DMV offices across the state will be back open for in-person appointments, but not all services will be available, like behind-the-wheel driving tests, for example. Customers are asked to wear facial coverings and will have to wait outside until they receive a text message for their appointment. DMV officials are still urging customers to go online for things like vehicle registration renewal.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the brother of George Floyd tells Congress there needs to be an end to police violence and racism. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And now for an update on our top story. A woman who was shot in the face with a beanbag round by La Mesa Police shared her story today. Leslie Furcron spent a week in the intensive care unit and says she's thankful to be alive. Her attorney said they are planning to sue for medical costs and want the officer who fired the round identified. La Mesa's police chief has declined to release that officer's name, but is promising an investigation. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.